A street vendor in Manila just inherited $100 million from a man she never met. October 15th, 2025. Two lawyers in a black Mercedes pull up to a flower stall in Quiapo. They're looking for Amihan Santos. She's 52. Sells flowers for 20 pesos. Lives in a one-room apartment above a convenience store. They hand her a document. A Dubai Sheikh, billionaire, oil magnate, royalty, has named her in his will. $100 million. She has 30 days to fly to Dubai and claim it. But there's something else in the briefcase. A photograph from 1989. A young nurse standing beside the Sheikh, smiling, alive. Amihan's breath catches. That's her mother. The woman who left for a nursing job in Dubai when Amihan was 15 and never came home. The lawyers lean forward. Your mother didn't abandon you, Ms. Santos. She was murdered. And this will? It's his confession. Amihan's hands start shaking. The money comes with a condition, and the truth is going to destroy a family. Welcome to True Crime Story Files. Real people, real crimes, real consequences, because every story matters. Subscribe now, turn on the bell, and step inside the world where truth meets tragedy. Before we talk about the $100 million, you need to understand who Amihan Santos was on the morning of October 15th, 2025. She woke up at 4:30 in the morning, same as she had for the last 27 years. Her alarm was a neighbor's rooster. Her apartment was one room above a sari-sari store in Quiapo, Manila. 12 square meters, a single fan, a hot plate for cooking. The window overlooked Carlos Palanca Street, where the jeepneys started their routes before sunrise. By 5:15, she was at her flower stall outside the minor basilica of the Black Nazarene. She'd been renting that same corner spot since 1998. Her hands moved quickly, twisting sampaguita stems into garlands, white jasmine flowers, fragrant, delicate. Tourists bought them for photographs. Locals bought them for prayer offerings. 20 pesos per garland. On a good day, she sold 60. On a bad day, 30. She had a daughter, Maria, 28 years old, who worked as a customer service representative at a call center in Makati. Maria had a son, Miguel, 8 years old, who lived with Amihan during the week while Maria worked night shifts. Miguel was small for his age, born with a heart murmur the doctors said would need surgery eventually. They were saving for it. Slowly. Amihan didn't complain about her life. She didn't dream about what could have been. That kind of thinking was dangerous when you had bills to pay and a grandson who needed medicine. But there was one subject that made her go quiet. One name that could end a conversation in seconds. Her mother. Maria had asked about her grandmother exactly twice growing up. The first time, Amihan said she didn't know where she was. The second time, Amihan said, I don't have a mother. Don't ask again. Maria never did. That was the world Amihan lived in on October 15th, 2025. Small, controlled, hers. And then at 4:47 p.m., a black Mercedes S-Class pulled up to her flower stall. In Quiapo, you don't see cars like that. Not at street level, not stopping for vendors. Amihan looked up from counting her day's earnings, 840 pesos, and watched two men step out. The first was Filipino, maybe late 40s, wearing a barong Tagalog that probably cost more than Amihan made in 3 months. The second was older, Middle Eastern, with silver hair and expensive glasses. Both carried leather briefcases. The Filipino man approached her stall and spoke in Tagalog. Excuse me, ma'am. Are you Amihan Santos? Daughter of Luz Santos? Amihan's hands stopped moving. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. Who's asking? The man handed her a business card, printed in gold. Dante Pasquale, attorney at law, international probate and estate services. This is Mr. Karim Rashid, Pasquale gestured to the other man. He's an attorney from Dubai. We've been searching for you for 2 weeks. Rashid spoke in careful, accented English. Miss Santos, I represent the estate of Sheikh Zayed Al Mansour. He passed away on last month. You are named in his will. Amihan's throat tightened. I don't know anyone in Dubai. But your mother did. And there it was, the name that could stop her heart. I don't have a mother, Amihan said, the words automatic, a reflex she'd practiced for decades. Rashid's expression softened. He opened his briefcase and removed a folder. From it, he pulled a photograph, old, slightly faded, the edges worn. I think you do. Amihan stared at the image. A young woman, maybe 35, wearing a crisp white nurse's uniform. She stood in a hospital corridor, sunlight coming through a window behind her. Next to her was a man in traditional Emirati dress. White robes, a red and white checkered headscarf. They weren't touching, but they were smiling. The woman's smile was careful, professional, but her eyes were bright. Amihan recognized those eyes. She'd seen them last when she was 15 years old, standing at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, watching her mother board a plane to Dubai. Rashid turned the photograph over. On the back, handwritten in English. She saved my life. I could not save hers. Amihan's vision blurred. Where did you get this? From Sheikh Zayed's personal effects. He kept it in his desk for 36 years. The lawyer, Pasquale, spoke gently. Ms. Santos, the Sheikh left you $100 million in his will. The entire amount is in a trust. But there's a condition. You have to come to Dubai, in person, within 30 days. Why? To learn the truth about what happened to your mother. Amihan's hands were shaking now. She pressed them flat against the wooden counter of her stall. What truth? She left. She stopped writing. She never came back. Rashid leaned forward. His voice was quiet, steady. Your mother didn't abandon you, Miss Santos. She was killed, and the Sheikh knew who did it. The street noise around them, the jeepneys, the vendors, the churchgoers, seemed to fade into static. If you don't come, Pasquale added, the money transfers to the Philippine Department of Health. You'll get nothing. And the truth stays buried. Rashid placed a manila folder on her flower cart. Inside was a plane ticket. Manila to Dubai. Departure date, October 20th. 5 days away. Your mother wanted you to know what happened, Rashid said. The Sheikh made sure you'd have the choice. Amihan didn't touch the folder. That night, after Maria picked up Miguel, after the streets emptied and the basilica lights dimmed, Amihan sat alone in her apartment. The folder lay unopened on her table. She'd spent 37 years building a life without her mother, without explanations, without closure. And now, a dead billionaire was offering her all three. For the first time in decades, Amihan Santos let herself cry. On the morning of October 18th, Amihan sat across from her daughter in their small apartment and asked a question she never thought she'd ask. Do you want to know what happened to your grandmother? Maria looked up from her coffee. She was 28, but in that moment, she looked younger. Don't you? Amihan had been carrying the manila folder for 3 days. She'd opened it exactly once. The plane ticket. The hotel reservation at the address downtown Dubai. A contact number for Karim Rashid. And a handwritten note on expensive letterhead. Your mother deserves to be remembered. You deserve to know why. I'm scared, Amihan admitted. Maria reached across the table and took her mother's hand. Then I'll be scared with you. But you're going. 2 days later, on October 20th, 2025, Amihan Santos boarded Philippine Airlines Flight 382 to Dubai. It was the first time she'd ever left the Philippines, the first time she'd been on a plane. The flight attendant offered her champagne. Amihan asked for water. For 7 hours, she stared out the window, watching the world shrink beneath her. When the plane descended into Dubai International Airport, Amihan pressed her face to the window and felt her stomach turn. The city rose from the sand like something out of a dream. Glass towers reflecting the sunset. Highways stacked in layers. Lights everywhere, even though it wasn't dark yet. She'd never felt smaller in her life. The airport was worse. Everything was marble and steel and air-conditioned to the point where Amihan had to pull her cardigan tight. People moved past her in designer clothes, speaking languages she didn't recognize. No one looked at her. She was invisible here. A driver held a sign with her name on it. The car was a Mercedes. The hotel lobby had a fountain that was 3 stories tall. Amihan barely slept. The next morning, October 21st at 10 o'clock, she stood on the 40th floor of a building called the Exchange Tower, staring at a brass plaque that read, Al-Rashid and Partners, International Law. Karim Rashid met her in the lobby. He was dressed more casually than he'd been in Manila. No suit jacket, just a pressed white shirt. He shook her hand and spoke in Tagalog. Kumusta kayo, Miss Santos? Thank you for coming. It was a small thing, but hearing her language in this cold, polished place made Amihan's throat tighten. He led her to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Burj Khalifa. Amihan had seen it in pictures. In person, it looked fake. Too tall. Too perfect. Would you like coffee? Rashid asked. I had my assistant prepare barako. I thought you might appreciate something from home. Amihan nodded. When the coffee came, it smelled like her kitchen in Manila. She almost cried. Rashid sat across from her and opened a thin folder. The label read, Confidential, Luz Santos, Employment Records 1988 to 1989. Before I show you this, he said gently, I need you to understand something. Your mother was extraordinary. What she did saved a man's life, but it also put her in danger. He slid the first document across the table. A hospital employment contract dated December 12, 1988. Luz Santos, registered nurse, hired as private medical staff for Sheikh Zayed Al Mansour. The Sheikh was 37 years old at the time, Rashid explained. Wealthy, yes, but not yet the head of the family. He had 3 sons. The eldest, Khalid, was 18. The family was complicated. Amihan stared at her mother's signature on the contract. The handwriting was neat, careful. She recognized it from the letters that had stopped coming. Rashid continued. On March 14, 1989, the Sheikh collapsed during a family dinner at his private residence. The family physician diagnosed cardiac arrest, but your mother didn't believe it. He pulled out a medical report, handwritten in English. Luz's handwriting. Patient presenting with abdominal pain, vomiting, peripheral neuropathy, tachycardia. Symptoms inconsistent with cardiac event. Suspect heavy metal poisoning, possibly thallium. Have administered Prussian blue from personal supply. Patient stabilized. Doctor. Mansour conducting toxicology. Family denying any possibility of poisoning. Your mother knew. She'd treated a case in Manila years before. She saved the Sheikh's life. Who poisoned him? Rashid hesitated. Then he slid another document across the table. A witness statement, sealed and notarized by the family's private physician. The Sheikh's eldest son, Khalid. He was 18 years old. His uncles had convinced him that his father was planning to name a younger brother as heir. They told Khalid he needed to act first. Amihan felt her breath catch. A son tried to kill his own father? Yes. And when your mother saved him, she exposed the attempt. The family panicked. They questioned her. Wanted to know how she knew it was poison, who she'd told, what she'd documented. Rashid pulled out a hospital log. Entries in Luz's handwriting, dated between March and September 1989. Amihan could see the fear growing in her mother's words. May 3rd. Sheikh's brothers asking questions about my background. June 8th. Someone entered my apartment while I was at work. Nothing taken. August 20th. Dr. Mansour says I should consider going home. I'm afraid. The final entry was dated September 15th, 1989. Family asking what I saw the night of the dinner. I told them I gave emergency medication, nothing more. They don't believe me. Dr. Mansour says I should leave immediately. I'm afraid. I don't know if I'll make it home. 3 days later, Luz Santos's employment was terminated. The reason listed, voluntary departure. But Philippine immigration had no record of her entering the country. No one in her family ever heard from her again. Her body was never found. Rashid closed the folder and looked at Amihan. His eyes were sad. The Sheikh believed his family had her killed. He couldn't prove it, and he didn't try hard enough. That's what he wrote in his will. He said he was a coward, and this inheritance is his way of giving you what he couldn't give her, the truth. Amihan sat in silence, staring at her mother's last words. I'm afraid. I don't know if I'll make it home. She hadn't made it home, and Amihan had spent 37 years hating her for it. If you're hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button. We cover the most unbelievable true crime-inspired cases every week. Now, back to Amihan's choice. Karim Rashid reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed manila envelope. It was thick, maybe 40 pages. The seal was red wax, stamped with an emblem Amihan didn't recognize. This is what the Sheikh wanted you to see, Rashid said quietly. The second condition of the will is that you receive full disclosure. Everything he knew. Everything he kept hidden. He slid the envelope across the table. Amihan stared at it. Her hands wouldn't move. Take your time, Rashid said. I'll be outside if you need me. When the door closed, Amihan broke the seal. Inside was a medical file that had been locked away for 36 years. The first document was a toxicology report from Dubai Central Hospital, dated March 15th, 1989. It listed the patient as Sheikh Zayed Al-Mansour, age 37. The findings were clear. Thallium detected in blood samples at dangerous levels. The report noted that treatment had been administered by private nursing staff before hospital arrival, which likely prevented fatal outcome. There were photographs, Polaroids, faded and slightly yellow. The Sheikh in a hospital bed, unconscious, an IV in his arm. His skin was gray. His lips were cracked. In one photo, a woman in a nurse's uniform stood beside him, checking his vitals. Her face was turned away from the camera, but Amihan knew the shape of her shoulders, the way she held her pen. That was her mother. The next section was a sworn testimony from Dr. Hassan Mansour, the family's private physician, notarized on March 20th, 1989. In careful English, he described how nurse Luz Santos had identified symptoms of heavy metal poisoning when everyone else had accepted the diagnosis of cardiac arrest. He wrote that she'd acted without authorization using a medication she'd brought from the Philippines, Prussian blue, an antidote rarely stocked in Middle Eastern hospitals at the time. She'd saved the Sheikh's life. But it was the handwritten notes that broke Amihan. Page after page in her mother's neat handwriting. Clinical observations mixed with personal fear. And then, on a page dated August 28, 1989, a note that made Amihan's vision blur. If something happens to me, please tell my daughter I didn't abandon her. I was trying to protect her. I stopped writing because I didn't want them to trace her. I love her. I'm so sorry. Amihan's hands were shaking so badly she had to set the papers down. Her mother hadn't abandoned her. She'd stopped writing to keep Amihan safe. For 37 years, Amihan had carried a lie, and her mother had died knowing Amihan believed it. The next document was a letter. Cream-colored stationery, handwritten in English, dated October 8, 2025, 1 week before the Sheikh died. It began, Ms. Amihan Santos, I am writing this knowing I will never have the courage to say these words to your face. I am a coward. Your mother saved my life, and I repaid her with silence when my family took hers. I told myself I was protecting my sons, protecting the family legacy, protecting the business. But I was protecting only my own comfort. I knew what they had done. I suspected it within days of her disappearance. I hired investigators. I asked questions. But I never demanded answers, because demanding answers would have meant admitting that my own son was complicit in murder. I kept your mother's nursing badge in my desk drawer for 36 years. Every morning when I opened that drawer, I saw it. A small metal pin with her name engraved in Arabic and English. It weighed almost nothing, but it felt heavier than anything I've ever carried. This inheritance is not generosity, Miss Santos. It is restitution. I have given you a choice I never gave your mother, the power to expose what happened or to take the money and let the past stay buried. The evidence is now yours. Do with it what justice requires. I cannot ask for forgiveness. I can only hope that the truth, late as it is, might bring you some measure of peace. Zayed al-Mansour. Amihan read the letter 3 times. When Rashid returned to the room, she was sitting perfectly still, staring at the skyline. The will has 2 options, Rashid explained carefully. Option A, you accept the $100 million. The funds are held in a blind trust managed by Zurich International Bank. To release them, you simply sign documentation confirming you've received full disclosure about your mother's death. The evidence stays sealed. The family's reputation stays intact. He paused. Option B, you refuse the money, and you authorize our firm to release all of this evidence to international media. The BBC, Al Jazeera, CNN. It would be a massive scandal. Attempted murder of a royal family member. A cover-up. The killing of a migrant worker. The UAE government would be forced to investigate. Would they arrest anyone? Amihan asked. Rashid's face was honest. Probably not. This happened in 1989. The people who gave the orders are likely dead. Khalid was a teenager. He'd claim he was manipulated. The legal system here protects powerful families. So even if I expose them, nothing happens. Publicity happens. Shame happens. The family loses face. But prison? No. I won't lie to you about that. Amihan looked down at her mother's handwriting. Where is she? Rashid opened a map of the United Arab Emirates. Red circles marked areas along the coast, in the desert, near industrial zones. The Sheikh hired 3 different private investigation firms between 1990 and 2005. They searched everywhere, interviewed former staff, checked hospital records, morgue records, Cremation logs. Nothing. So she could be anywhere. Yes, or she could be at sea. We don't know. Amihan's voice cracked for the first time. She saved his life, and he let them throw her away like garbage. Rashid nodded slowly. Yes, that's why he left you the choice. He couldn't give her justice, but he could give you the weapon. October 22nd, 2025. 2:15 in the afternoon. Amihan was back in the conference room at Al-Rashid and Partners, going through the medical files for the third time. She was trying to memorize her mother's handwriting, the loops in her L's, the way she crossed her T's. Small details she'd forgotten. Karim Rashid had stepped out to take a phone call. That's when the door opened. No knock, no warning. A man walked in, like he owned the building. Maybe he did. He was 54 years old, tall, silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than Amihan made in 5 years. His eyes were pale gray and completely devoid of warmth. Behind him were 2 younger men, same sharp features, same expensive clothes, but they looked uncomfortable, nervous. The lawyer, Karim Rashid, rushed back into the room. Mr. Al-Mansour, this meeting was not scheduled. You cannot. The man ignored him. He looked directly at Amihan and spoke in perfect English, his accent British educated. Miss Santos, I'm Khalid Al-Mansour. I believe you've been reading about me. Amihan stood up slowly. She was 5'2". He was over 6 feet. But she didn't look away. You know exactly why I'm here, she said. Khalid smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. My father left you $100 million. I think I have every right to understand why a complete stranger is inheriting my family's wealth. I'm not a stranger. My mother saved your father's life. Yes, and for that, we're all very grateful. His tone was flat, transactional, but gratitude and $100 million are 2 very different things. The lawyer stepped between them. Mr. Al-Mansour, this is highly inappropriate. If you have legal concerns about the will, you need to file through proper channels. Khalid waved him off. I'm not here to contest the will. I'm here to have a conversation. He pulled out a chair and sat down without being invited. The 2 men behind him remained standing. Amihan studied them. The one on the left was maybe 46, graying at the temples, his face tight with discomfort. The one on the right was younger, early 40s, staring at the floor. Khalid folded his hands on the table. Let me tell you what happened from my perspective, Miss Santos. In 1989, I was 18 years old. A child, by most standards. Old enough to poison your father. His jaw tightened, but he continued. My uncles came to me, told me my father was planning to disinherit me, that he was going to name my younger brother as his successor. They said I needed to prove my loyalty. They gave me something and told me to put it in my father's tea. Thallium, Amihan said. I didn't know what it was. I was 18. I did what my family told me to do. Amihan's voice was cold. You tried to kill him. I was manipulated by men who wanted power. And when your mother saved my father's life, those same men panicked. They said she'd expose the family, destroy us. They told me she was a threat. So you had her killed. Khalid's face hardened. I was sent to London the next day, put on a plane with a one-way ticket and orders to finish my education abroad. I was told your mother had been sent home safely. I didn't know what happened to her until years later. And when you found out? He didn't answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. I didn't ask questions, because I didn't want to know the answers. Amihan leaned forward. You were old enough to murder. You were old enough to ask questions? Khalid's composure cracked. His voice rose. My father could have protected her. He knew what my uncles were capable of. He could have sent her away before they got to her. But he didn't. He chose the family. He chose his reputation. So don't sit there and make him a saint just because he wrote a guilty will 36 years later. The words landed like a slap, because they were partially true. The Sheikh had been a coward. He'd admitted it himself. Khalid took a breath and shifted tactics. His voice became calm again, businesslike. Let me ask you something, Ms. Santos. What do you want? Revenge, justice, or money? I want my mother back. That's not possible. So let's talk about what is. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. I'm prepared to offer you $200 million, double what my father left you. You sign a non-disclosure agreement. The evidence stays sealed. You go back to Manila. You live the rest of your life very comfortably. Amihan stared at him. Your mother saved one life, Khalid continued. Think about how many lives you could save with 200 million. Hospitals, scholarships, medical research, real, tangible good in the world. Isn't that better than dragging my family through a scandal that won't bring her back? It was a compelling argument, and he knew it. Before Amihan could respond, one of the men behind Khalid spoke. The older one. I was 8 years old when it happened. Khalid turned sharply. Rashid, don't! But the man, Rashid, the Sheikh's third son, ignored him. He looked at Amihan with something close to shame in his eyes. I didn't know about any of this until I read the will 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry. If I could change what happened to your mother, I would. Khalid stood up abruptly. Don't apologize for surviving. Rashid's voice was steady. I'm apologizing for staying silent. The second brother, Faisal, shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. His silence was answer enough. Amihan watched the fracture in real time. This family was already broken. Khalid was the patriarch now, but his brothers weren't with him. Not completely. And that's when Amihan realized something. Khalid wasn't here to intimidate her. He was here because he was afraid. She stood up and gathered the files from the table. Khalid's eyes narrowed. You haven't answered my question. Amihan looked at him. Did you ever look for her body? What? My mother. After you found out she was dead. Did you look for her? Khalid's face was stone. No. Amihan nodded slowly. Then we have nothing to discuss. She walked toward the door. Khalid called after her. You have 48 hours, Ms. Santos. After that, I file an injunction to freeze the trust. You'll spend the next 10 years in court and walk away with nothing. Amihan stopped at the door but didn't turn around. Your father kept my mother's nursing badge in his desk for 36 years. He couldn't forget her. You never even tried to remember her. She walked out. Behind her she heard Rashid's voice, quiet but clear. She's right, Khalid. We should have looked. The door closed. If you were Amihan, what would you choose? 200 million and silence, or justice and years of legal war? Comment below. I read every single one. Now here's what she decided. October 22nd, 2025. 11 o'clock at night. Amihan stood at the window of her hotel room on the 38th floor of the address downtown, staring at a city that had killed her mother. The Burj Khalifa rose in the distance, lit up like a needle of light piercing the desert sky. Everything in Dubai was tall, clean, expensive. Everything felt impossible to touch. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's handwriting. If something happens to me, please tell my daughter I didn't abandon her. 37 years. That's how long Ami Han had carried the wrong story. She picked up her phone and called Manila. It was almost 2 a.m. there, but Maria answered on the second ring. Mama, are you okay? Ami Han's voice cracked. I don't know what to do. There was a pause, then Maria's voice, steady and calm. What are you going to do, Mama? I don't know. Your Lola saved his life. He let them kill her. How do I let that go? Maria was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, Do you have to? Ami Han didn't answer. Did Lola save his life? Maria asked. Yes. Then she was a hero. That doesn't change no matter what you choose. Ami Han pressed her forehead against the cold glass. I love you, Anak. I love you too. Call me tomorrow. When the line went dead, Ami Han sat on the edge of the bed and forced herself to think clearly. She had 3 options. She needed to choose. Option 1, take the $100 million. The evidence stays sealed. Khalid stays in power. Her mother's death remains a family secret buried in legal files that no one will ever read. But with that money, Ami Han could fund hospitals, pay for heart surgeries for children who couldn't afford them. Kids like Miguel, her grandson, who had a heart murmur the doctors said would need repair eventually. She could set up scholarships for nursing students. She could help thousands of people, real people, living people who needed help right now. Her mother had been a nurse. She'd spent her life saving others. Wouldn't she want the money to keep saving lives? But taking the money meant letting Khalid walk away. It meant pretending the murder didn't happen. It meant her mother's name would never be spoken aloud by the people who killed her. Option 2, refuse the money. Release the evidence. Let the whole world know what the Al-Mansour family did. International headlines. Migrant worker murdered in royal cover-up. The story would explode. The UAE government would be forced to respond. Khalid's reputation would be destroyed. But Karim Rashid had been honest with her. The UAE legal system protects powerful families. Khalid was 18 when it happened. He'd claim he was manipulated. His uncles were probably dead by now. No one would go to prison, and Khalid's lawyers would fight her for years. A decade, maybe longer. She'd spend the rest of her life in courtrooms, dealing with legal motions and appeals and injunctions. She'd end up with nothing. Broke, exhausted. And her mother would still be dead. Option 3, take Khalid's $200 million. Bury everything deeper. Twice the money. Twice the good she could do. More lives saved. More surgeries. More scholarships. She could build an entire hospital if she wanted to. But it was blood money. Money from the man who'd killed her mother. Could she live with that? Could she look at herself in the mirror, knowing she'd taken a payoff from a murderer? Ami Han stood up and walked back to the window. She thought about her mother at the airport in 1988. Ami Han had been 15, standing at the departure gate at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, watching her mother go through security. Luz had turned back one last time, waved, and smiled. I'll send for you, she'd called out. We'll have a better life, I promise. And young Ami Han had believed her. The letters came every month for the first 6 months. Long letters about Dubai, about the hospital, about the family she worked for, about how she was saving money, how they'd be together soon. And then the letters stopped. Ami Han turned 16 without her mother. 17, 18. She waited at the mailbox every week, hoping. And then one day, she stopped hoping. She stopped waiting. She decided her mother had chosen a new life and left her behind. That anger had shaped everything. It had made Amihan hard, self-reliant, closed off. She'd raised Maria alone, never letting anyone close enough to abandon her again. But her mother hadn't abandoned her. She'd been murdered for trying to save a life. Amihan reached into her bag and pulled out the small metal pin Karim Rashid had given her that afternoon. Her mother's nursing badge. It was tarnished, the engraving barely visible. Luz Santos, RN. The words were written in both Arabic and English. The Sheikh had kept it in his desk drawer for 36 years. Amihan held it in her palm. It weighed almost nothing. But she imagined her mother pinning it to her uniform every morning. The pride she must have felt. The duty, the care. Her mother had saved a man's life. Not because he deserved it. Not because he'd earned it. But because that's what nurses do. They save lives. Even when it costs them everything. Amihan thought about what her mother would want. Not revenge. Luz had saved a life, not taken one. But not silence either. In her final note, she'd written, "Tell my daughter I didn't abandon her." Her mother had wanted Amihan to know the truth. Amihan knew now. The question was, what did the rest of the world need to know? And what was justice worth when the person you loved could never come back? October 23rd, 2025. 9 o'clock in the morning. Amihan walked into the conference room at Al-Rashid and Partners for what she knew would be the last time. She'd been awake all night, but her mind was clear. Khalid Al-Mansour was already seated at the head of the table. His checkbook sat in front of him, a gold pen beside it. He looked rested, confident. A man who was certain he'd already won. His brothers sat behind him. Rashid, the younger one who'd apologized, looked tired. Faisal stared at his hands. Karim Rashid, the lawyer, entered with Amihan. He pulled out a chair for her, and she sat down slowly, taking her time. She looked at each person in the room. Let the silence stretch. Khalid broke first. "Have you made your decision?" Amihan didn't answer right away. She folded her hands on the table and studied Khalid's face. The expensive haircut, the perfectly knotted tie, the wedding ring on his left hand that probably cost more than her apartment. "I want to ask you something first," she said. Khalid's jaw tightened. "What?" "Do you think about her? My mother. Do you remember her face?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Khalid didn't answer immediately. For the first time since Amihan had met him, his composure cracked, just slightly, a flicker of something in his eyes. "I was 18, he said finally. "I barely remember that year." Amihan's voice was steady. "She remembered you. In her last note, she wrote that she was afraid of the family. She knew you'd kill her." Khalid's face hardened. "I didn't kill her. My uncles, you gave the order or you didn't stop it. It's the same thing." The room went silent. Then Rashid, the younger brother, stood up. His voice was quiet but firm. "I've read the file. Every page. What happened to her was wrong. Khalid, you need to say it." Khalid turned on him. "Don't," but Rashid kept talking. "She saved our father's life and we murdered her for it. That's the truth. And I'm tired of pretending it isn't." Faisal shifted in his chair but said nothing. His silence was louder than words. Khalid's fury was ice cold. "You want to destroy this family?" Rashid met his eyes. "I want to stop pretending we're not already destroyed." Amihan watched the fracture happen in real time. This family had been broken for 36 years. They'd just been pretending otherwise. She took a breath and spoke quietly. "I've made my decision." Every eye in the room turned to her. "I'm taking the 100 million, she said. "Not your 200, Khalid." Khalid exhaled. His shoulders relaxed. He reached for his pen. "But I'm not signing a non-disclosure agreement, and I'm not staying silent." His hand froze. His face darkened. "Then I'll release the injunction and freeze." "Let me finish." Something in her voice made him stop. Amihan laid out her terms. She'd thought about them all night. 3 conditions, non-negotiable. "First," she said, "the Al-Mansour family will establish a memorial scholarship at UAE University. It will be named the Luz Santos Scholarship for Nursing Excellence. It will be open to both Filipino and Emirati students. And it will be announced publicly, with my mother's photograph, her story." Khalid's lawyer started to object, but Khalid held up a hand. "Impossible," Khalid said. "A public announcement admits culpability." "It admits she existed," Amihan replied. "That's all I'm asking. The announcement will say she was a nurse who worked for your family and died in service. That's not a lie." Khalid stared at her. She stared back. "Second," Amihan continued, "you will write a letter, a sealed letter, held by Mr. Rashid's firm. In it, you will admit what happened. The poisoning, the cover-up, everything. If your family ever denies my mother's story, if you ever try to erase her name, the letter becomes public. You're blackmailing me." "I'm giving you the same choice your father gave me," Amihan said. "Tell the truth or live with the lie." Khalid's knuckles were white against the table. "Third," Amihan said, looking at Rashid, the younger brother, "the family will fund a private investigation to locate my mother's remains. If she's found, she'll be returned to Manila for burial. She deserves to come home." Rashid's voice was immediate. "I'll oversee it personally." Khalid sat in silence, calculating. Amihan could see his mind working. She wasn't asking for his arrest. She wasn't asking for a public trial. She wasn't even asking for an apology. She was asking for acknowledgement. That her mother had existed. That her mother had mattered. That her mother's name wouldn't be erased. He could survive this. His business would survive this. His reputation would take a small hit, maybe, but it wouldn't destroy him. Finally, Khalid spoke. "Fine, but the scholarship announcement will be framed as a charitable initiative. No mention of how she died. The announcement says she was a nurse who worked for your family and died in service," Amihan repeated. "That's the truth. You can live with the truth." Khalid looked at his lawyer. "Draft it." The next 3 hours were a blur of legal documents. Amihan signed the inheritance acceptance forms. Swiss Bank was notified. The trust would be transferred within 10 business days. Khalid signed the scholarship endowment agreement. $50,000 per year in perpetuity for nursing students. The first recipient would be announced in 6 months. The sealed letter was written by Khalid's own hand, in the presence of 2 witnesses. Karim Rashid locked it in a safe in his office. It would stay there, unless the family broke their word. When it was done, Amihan stood to leave. She felt lighter than she had in days. Khalid stopped her at the door. "You could have destroyed us." Amihan turned to look at him. "I could have. But my mother didn't save your father's life, so I could spend mine hating you." She looked at Rashid, the younger brother. "Find her, please." He nodded. "I will. I promise." Amihan walked out of the conference room and didn't look back. Behind her, she heard Khalid's voice, bitter and low. "You're a fool, Rashid. And Rashid's response, quiet but certain, maybe, but I'll sleep tonight. Amihan stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, she touched the nursing badge in her pocket. The small metal pin her mother had worn every day. She'd done what she came to do. Not revenge, not silence. Something in between. Justice that was late, incomplete, and imperfect. But justice nonetheless. October 30th, 2025. 7 days after signing the papers in Dubai. Amihan Santos landed at Ninoy Aquino International Airport at 6 in the evening. The humidity hit her the moment she stepped off the plane. After a week in Dubai's air-conditioned cold, Manila felt like coming up for air. Maria and Miguel were waiting at arrivals. Miguel saw her first and ran, nearly knocking her over. "Lola, are we rich now?" Amihan laughed and picked him up, even though he was getting too big for it. "No, anak, but we're going to help a lot of people." Maria hugged her mother tight. She didn't ask about Dubai, not yet. She just held on. That night, in their small apartment above the Sari Sari store in Quiapo, Amihan gave Maria the nursing badge. The small tarnished pin that had sat in a billionaire's desk for 36 years. "This was your Lola's," Amihan said quietly. "She was a hero." Maria turned it over in her hands, reading the engraving. Then she started crying. Not loud, just tears running down her face. "I wish I'd known her," Maria whispered. "Me too," Amihan said. "Me too." By mid-November, Amihan had established the Luz Santos Medical Trust. She worked with lawyers in Manila to set up the structure. $80 million went into the endowment. She kept $20 million for security, for Maria's future, for Miguel's education and his eventual heart surgery. The trust's mission was simple: free heart surgeries for children across Southeast Asia who couldn't afford them. The first recipient was a 6-year-old girl named Celeste from Tondo, the same neighborhood where Amihan had grown up. Celeste had been born with a ventricular septal defect. Her mother worked as a laundrywoman. They'd been on a waiting list for 2 years, saving centavos, hoping. The surgery happened at Philippine Heart Center on November 28th. Amihan sat in the observation gallery and watched the surgeons work. When Celeste's heart monitor stabilized and the lead surgeon gave a thumbs up, Amihan closed her eyes and thought, "This is what you would have done, Mama." By December, the trust had funded 47 surgeries. They'd partnered with hospitals in Indonesia and Vietnam. Amihan was invited to speak at medical conferences, charity galas, university events. She declined every invitation. She wasn't interested in being famous. Twice a week, she still went to her flower stall in Quiapo. She didn't need the money anymore. But it was who she was. When people asked why she still sold flowers, she said simply, "It's who I am." On December 15th, 2025, UAE University issued a press release announcing the Luz Santos Scholarship for Nursing Excellence. The statement read, "The Al Mansour family honors Luz Santos, a dedicated nurse who served with distinction in the UAE from 1988 to 1989. This scholarship will support the next generation of healthcare heroes." It included a photograph. Her mother at 36, in her white uniform, smiling, young, alive, full of hope. The first scholarship recipient was a 22-year-old Filipina nursing student named Josefina Cruz. She sent Amihan a handwritten letter in January. "Dear Ms. Santos, I never knew about Luz Santos before I received this scholarship. But now I know her name. I know what she did. I know she saved a life. I promise I'll work hard. I promise I'll make her proud. Thank you for making sure her name wasn't forgotten." Amihan framed the letter and put it on her shelf next to her mother's photograph. In January 2026, Amihan received an email from Rashid al-Mansour, not Khalid, the younger brother. The subject line read, "Update on the search." Ms. Santos, I wanted to let you know that we've hired a team of private investigators and forensic experts. They're experienced in locating remains in desert environments. We're focusing on areas near industrial zones outside Dubai, where waste was disposed of in the late 1980s and early 1990s. I know it's been 37 years. I know the chances are small. But I gave you my word. We won't stop looking. Amihan wrote back, "Thank you. Even if you don't find her, you tried. That matters more than you know." She meant it. Just knowing someone was searching, that her mother hadn't been completely forgotten by the people who'd taken her, brought a kind of peace Amihan hadn't expected. The nightmares didn't stop. Some nights, Amihan still dreamed of her mother calling for help, reaching out while Amihan ran and never got closer. She'd wake up crying, gasping for air. But other nights, she dreamed of her mother in the hospital in Dubai, young and strong, saving a dying man's life. In these dreams, her mother would turn and look at Amihan and smile. "I kept my promise," she'd say. "I gave you a better life." Amihan would wake from those dreams feeling less alone. One afternoon, Miguel asked her a question out of nowhere. "Did your mama love you, Lola?" Amihan looked up from the flowers she was arranging. "Yes, anak." "Why do you ask?" Miguel shrugged, the way 8-year-olds do. "Because you're still sad when you talk about her, but you're also happy. That's weird." Amihan smiled. Love is weird like that. On a Tuesday in late January, a young woman approached Amihan's flower stall. She was maybe 23, wearing jeans and a backpack, holding her phone. "Are you Amihan Santos?" Amihan nodded. The woman showed her the screen. It was the UAE University press release, the Luz Santos scholarship announcement. "I'm going to Dubai next year," the woman said, her voice shaking with emotion. "To study nursing. Because of your mother's scholarship, my family is poor. I thought I'd never get to study abroad, but because of her," she started crying. "Because of her, I can." Amihan stood up and took the young woman's hands. "Work hard," she said gently. "Be kind to your patients. That's how you honor her." The woman nodded, wiped her eyes, and left. Amihan sat back down at her stall. She picked up a stem of sampaguita and twisted it into a garland, her hands moving automatically after decades of practice. "Your name is still saving lives, Mama," she thought. Not every story ends with revenge. Sometimes justice comes late. Sometimes it's incomplete. Sometimes the people responsible never face consequences. But Luz Santos's name outlived the men who tried to erase her. Every year, another nursing student will learn her story. Another child will receive a life-saving surgery. Another family will know hope. And in the end, that might be the only revenge that matters. The quiet kind. The kind that saves lives. This story was inspired by real cases of contested international inheritances and the injustices faced by migrant workers worldwide. If you want more stories like this, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next story.